Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to take a look at how to create
emitters.
Emitters, exactly right. And Joel goes to cut me off again. And so I'm going to get one of Buzz's swords and bring it out here. And if he cuts me off again, I'm going to cut some stuff off as well.
Ow.
So, beginning again, in this lesson, we're going to take a look at creating a waterfall type effect using a sprite emitter inside of Unreal. Joel, please continue.
Okay. So, how do we create an emitter? Come up to our actor browser and selecting our emitter. And another thing, if we expand this out, you'll notice we have all sorts of predefined emitters that we could use for different onslaught vehicles and all sorts of different things. But we're going to just use a generic emitter. So with that selected, we can come over here, right-click, and add emitter here. So we've added an emitter. And you'll notice what's really, really cool is that we can see all of these effects right inside of our viewport. We don't have to wait, which is really, really nice. And we don't have to go into Unreal, is what I really meant to say.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So that's really, really nice.
So the effects are real time right here.
Exactly.
Wicked.
So if we come into here, double-click on our emitter, we have our emitter properties.
Emitter properties.
Oh, yeah. So let's open our emitter, and you'll notice we do not have any emitters. We've created an emitter, but we don't have any emitters.
Okay, before you confuse everybody and everybody closes this video and walks away, which, you know, wouldn't surprise me too much, but...
Well, thank you.
I'm just kidding. Actually, what we have here is we have an emitter actor, and we don't have any actual emitters within this actor right now.
Right.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and add. So we've got one emitter so far, but we haven't created. So what we're essentially doing is saying, okay, this is an array. We can have as many emitters as we want. But then inside of this, we get to choose whether we want to create a beam emitter, mesh emitter, spark emitter.
Using all that programming terminology. This is an array.
Oh, I try not to, but you never know. So,
well, just to reiterate, you can think of the emitter actor as a container that holds emitters, which kind of goes back to your array analogy from earlier, because, of course, in programming, an array is a lot like a container that holds several different compartments.
Right, and it can hold beam emitters, sprite emitters. It can hold any sort of emitter you want. It doesn't have to be all beam emitters or all sprite emitters.
Exactly right.
So let's go ahead, and in this case, we want to add a sprite emitter.
Ooh.
So let's select a sprite emitter and press New. And check this out, we just have a whole bunch of properties that we can set. And if we move our viewport over here, you'll notice that this
is there a property for adjusting the lemony lime flavor?
Yes, no, there isn't.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought I'd check.
Yeah, I know. You always have to check. So what we can do is come into here, since it's a waterfall, we can go into our texture and go into our texture browser. And what we're going to do is go into the right texture. So, if we go into Load...
Or the proper texture.
The proper texture. If that makes you feel better. So, we'll open our emitter textures.utx file, or package, and let's just select all of them. And if we go all the way down here, looking, we have a texture waterfall 3.
Wow.
Now, one thing you need to notice is that there's 4 different sprites inside of this one sprite. Now, I guess a good thing to say right now is, what is a sprite? A sprite is a 2D...
It's not a soft drink.
It's definitely not a soft drink. What it is a 2D plane that holds some sort of image, a texture. So a sprite is what's going to be emitted in this case because it's a sprite emitter.
I gotcha.
So since there's 4, we're going to have to set up a few extra properties. So with this selected, we'll exit our texture browser.
Oh, and just to push it to the next level, a sprite is going to be a 2D plane that always faces the camera.
Hey. How fancy is that?
Isn't that super fancy?
Yes.
You like that?
I do like it.
All right.
And, of course, we can come into our sprite properties, just so you know, and use direction as we can set different types of, which do determine whether the sprite is facing the camera or not. And by default, it is always facing the camera.
Okay, cool.
So coming down to texture here, let's just press Use because we have it selected. And now, look at that. It's emitting this 4 sprites all at once.
That's pretty ugly, dude.
Very, very ugly. So what we want to do is make sure that it cycles between these 4, not just use them as one single sprite. So under Texture U Subdivisions, there's 2 across the U direction. So we're going to set this to 2. Under V Subdivisions, we're going to set this to 2 as well. And now if we come in here, hey, look at that. It's cycling between those 4. So we get an animated sprite, which is really nice.
So we had one texture that was divided up into 4.
Right.
2 by 2. So now all we're doing is telling each one of our sprites to sample from different areas of that 2 by 2 grid.
That's exactly it.
Awesome.
So now we get something really cool, but the size is way too big.
Yeah, that's a little scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. So if we come down to the size tab here, so start size range. So
no matter what anybody tells you, size does matter.
Yes, it does. So if we come down to start size range, right now it is set to uniform size because this is a sprite. So all we need to do is come down to X and change one axis. That's all we need to change.
Okay.
So under here, we can kind of just tweak around a little bit. We can set this to maybe, I don't know, maybe 15. And we can start with 15 and see what it looks like.
That paper you're reading off of doesn't know either.
No, of course it doesn't. Yeah, I do have a few values that do seem to work pretty well over here, so I'll be looking at it every now and then to make sure that I get something that looks...
I'm just giving you a hard time. You're just keeping everything efficient, and I commend you for it.
Yay. So right now, what it's doing is you'll notice that inside of the emitters, all these different properties here, you'll often get a min and a max. What this allows us to do is have a range of different values, so that it's not the same every time. If you want something natural, if you look at inside of nature, things aren't always the same.
It's a good place to find natural things is inside of nature.
Very, very funny, Zach.
All right, I'm sorry. I'll quit picking on Joel. I give Joel a bit of a harder time than he probably deserves, but he just takes it so well.
I probably do deserve it on some low level.
Maybe. All right, go ahead, Bingo.
All right, so let's come down up to if we come up to location right now, we need to set where it's going to be emitting from.
Okay.
Now, there's a few things. If we come down to location, say start location range, we could set a box shape, because right now start location shape is set to PTLS_box.
All right.
So it's going to be emitting from a box area. In this case, it seems more logical to be emitting from a spherical area.
Well, that makes sense, because we got this cylindrical shape at the end of our pipe.
That's right. So if we come up to sphere radius range, we could set this to something like 5, and now if you look, well, it's not seeing a whole lot of difference, and here's the reason why. Under start location shape, instead of PTLS box, we need to change this to PTLS sphere.
Ah.
So now if you come in here, it is emitting from a 5 radius. And maybe we need to bump this up to 15.
Oh, look at you go.
So now it's emitting from this entire spherical area.
So it's really starting to look like it's emitting within the end of that pipe.
That's right. However, we don't really have a whole lot of particles here.
Right.
So let's come up to general, and let's bump this up to maybe 200.
That's the max particle setting you just changed?
Exactly. We have the max particles, and now I've set it to 200, so it can emit a maximum of 200 particles.
Okay, very cool.
And another thing we need to change. I know I'm jumping back and forth here, but you'll find yourself doing this when you start working with emitters. It's just
absolutely.
the way it works.
I mean, any particle system, really, in any application, you'll find yourself jumping around to different parameters.
Right, it's a playing thing.
Right.
So if we come back down to velocity, well, we need him to be shooting out, just like we had in the intro lesson when you saw it. So,
yeah, that was pretty cool. Much better than what we've got here, where it just kind of looks like a foaming pipe.
It looks kind of like milk.
I've never seen a pipe foam milk at the end before, but hey.
Hey, you never know. This is Unreal. It can be Unreal. So under Y, start velocity range. Now we want it to start shooting out. So we can set this to maybe, I don't know, 200 and 100 for a minimum, so it's a range between 100 and 200.
Oh, look at you go.
So
firing little globs across the room.
Looks really horrible. So what we can do is come back up, and now what we need to do is add some gravity to this guy.
Cool.
So if we come up to the acceleration tab, under acceleration, this is a Z up world, so we want to come down to Z and add a little bit of, well, negative, I don't know, 50, much more, negative 200.
Oh, check it out.
So now it's starting to shoot out and actually fall to the ground, which looks, well, kind of cool, but, you know, maybe we need to adjust this a little bit, because right now, frankly, it looks pretty crappy.
Yeah, it's kind of like cottage cheese being fired out of the end of a giant pipe, which is actually one of the probably more disgusting things I've thought of in a while.
Yeah, that's horrible. So let's switch this maybe to a little bit more, something like negative 300. I'm liking the way that's looking. Now, a few more things that we need to set. Of course, this is a testing thing. We may come up with something really good, so jumping down back to, let me see, general, looking, right up to here, let's increase the number of particles.
Okay, just so there's not as much separation in our particles.
So something like that.
So that looks a lot more continuous.
A lot more like milk. That's not what we're going for, but for some reason it always seems like I end up with milk.
I'm sure eventually we'll change the color of this and maybe adjust the opacity a bit as well.